I'm Audrey Mitchell, 28 years old, and I never expected to be homeless after a family dinner. The tension was thick as we ate in my parents' elegant Boston home. I'd moved back temporarily after losing my marketing job 3 weeks ago. As my father set down his fork, his cold words froze me. "You have 2 days to get your stuff out." My mother nodded in agreement. Their disapproval of my career choices had always simmered beneath the surface, but this ultimatum blindsided me. Before I tell you how I turned this crushing moment into my greatest victory, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you've ever had to restart your life from scratch. Growing up in our upper-middle-class Boston suburb, expectations were always crystal clear. My father, Richard Mitchell, built his reputation as one of the city's most formidable corporate lawyers. His corner office overlooked the harbor, and his name appeared regularly in local business journals. My mother, Eleanor, had been a marketing executive before I was born. She traded her career for charity galas and country club memberships, becoming the perfect corporate wife. Our home was beautiful, but rigid museum-like perfection, with rules about everything from dinner conversation topics to appropriate weekend activities. Success wasn't celebrated, it was expected. Failure wasn't an option discussed in the Mitchell household. From my earliest memories, I had a camera in my hands. I'd save my allowance for film, spending hours capturing light patterns through trees or expressions on strangers' faces. When I'd proudly show my parents these photos, my father would glance briefly before asking about my math homework. My mother would smile tightly and say, "That's a nice hobby, dear, but let's focus on things that build a future." By high school, the path was predetermined: law school like Dad, or perhaps business school. When I expressed interest in photography or journalism, it was dismissed immediately. Artists starve, Audrey Mitchell succeed. This was my father's mantra. I compromised, choosing communications at Boston University instead of the arts program I truly wanted. Even this was met with disapproval, though they funded my education with the stipulation that I minor in business. Throughout college and after, my achievements were always measured against my cousin Brittany. She followed the approved path: Wharton Business School, management consulting, then Harvard Business School. Every family gathering included updates on Brittany's promotions, her condo purchase, her investment portfolio. My mother never failed to mention these accomplishments while asking when I might get serious about my career. After graduation, I secured a position at Apex Digital, a mid-sized marketing agency. While not prestigious enough for my parents' standards, it was creative work I enjoyed, allowing me to incorporate visual elements in campaigns. Over 5 years, I worked my way up to senior content strategist. My apartment was small but mine, my salary modest but sufficient. I was building something authentic to me. Then came the corporate restructuring. In a single Thursday meeting, our department was reduced by half. Despite positive performance reviews, my position was eliminated. Market conditions, they said as they handed me a modest severance package. For 3 weeks, I applied to positions daily while watching my savings dwindle. Boston's rental market made finding a new apartment with no immediate income nearly impossible. When my lease ended, I faced the decision I'd dreaded: asking my parents for temporary help. The conversation was predictably humiliating. My father agreed I could stay for 3 months, but not without noting that real professionals always have an emergency fund, and that Brittany managed her first property investment by 26. My mother's comments were gentler, but equally cutting. "Perhaps this is a wake-up call to reconsider your field, sweetheart." I moved into my childhood bedroom, now stripped of personality, and repurposed as a sterile guest room. Each night, I'd apply for jobs until my eyes burned, then fall asleep to the distant sounds of my parents discussing Audrey's situation in hushed, concerned tones. The tension escalated daily. My father questioned every job application that wasn't corporate. My mother suggested connections of hers at companies I had no interest in. Breakfast included readings from the business section about industries with actual futures. Dinner conversations became interrogations about my job search progress. Then came that fateful Sunday dinner. My mother had prepared roast beef for Mitchell tradition for important conversations. I should have recognized the warning sign. As we ate in strained silence, I noticed their exchanged glances. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have discussed your situation," he began, his tone the same one he used for difficult clients. "We've decided that this arrangement isn't working out. You need a push to get serious about your life." I set down my fork, confusion replacing hunger. "What do you mean?" "We agreed on 3 months. It's only been 3 weeks." My mother dabbed her lips with her napkin, avoiding my eyes. "The Prescotts are hosting their annual gala next weekend. Several of your father's potential clients will attend." "And?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "And," my father continued, "we can't very well explain to them that our nearly 30-year-old daughter is unemployed and living at home because of her poor career choices." The truth emerged. My presence had become an embarrassment, evidence of parental failure in their social circle. The ultimatum wasn't about my welfare, but their reputation. 2 days, my father repeated, cutting into his roast beef as if he'd simply commented on the weather. "That should be sufficient time to make arrangements." I stared at them, waiting for some sign this was a terrible joke. "You can't be serious. Where exactly am I supposed to go with no job, and 2 days' notice?" My mother sighed. "Audrey, don't be dramatic. You have friends, surely. This situation is simply untenable." Untenable. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "I lost my job in a corporate downsizing. I'm not some dropout or addict. I worked at the same company for 5 years with regular promotions. In a field with no stability," my father countered. "We warned you about this. Marketing, content creation, it's all fluff, especially at these digital startups. Brittany's firm is hiring, you know. Her boss would interview you as a favor." "I don't want to work at Brittany's firm. I don't want to be Brittany." The words exploded before I could contain them. My father's expression hardened. "Clearly. Brittany would never find herself in your position. She planned her career properly." "Richard," my mother interjected, placing her hand on his arm, though whether to restrain him or support him wasn't clear. She turned to me. "Sweetheart, we're not saying this to be cruel. Sometimes love means tough decisions. You need motivation to reach your potential." "By making me homeless?" I asked incredulously. "That's your definition of love?" "You're being melodramatic," my father said. "You're not going to be homeless. You're going to be independent, as you should have been all along. This failure to launch isn't doing you any favors. We simply can't explain to the Prescotts and the Whitmores why you're living here," my mother added. "Emily Whitmore's daughter, just made partner at her law firm. What would I say when they ask about you?" The truth hit me like a physical blow. Their reputation at the country club mattered more than my welfare. Their concern wasn't for me, but for what others would think of them. I pushed back from the table. "Our agreement was 3 months. I've been applying to jobs every day. This isn't fair, and you know it." My father's expression didn't change. "Life isn't fair, Audrey. That's lesson 1 in the real world. You have until Tuesday evening. We've been more than generous." "Generous?" I nearly laughed. "Is that what you call this? We raised you, educated you, gave you every advantage, he counted off on his fingers. And at some point, the return on investment needs to materialize. Tuesday evening. Not a day longer. I looked to my mother, hoping for some support, but she merely looked down at her plate. "It's for the best, dear," she murmured. "You'll thank us someday." I stood, napkin dropping to the floor. "Don't count on it." I walked out, legs somehow carrying me upstairs though they felt disconnected from my body. In my sterile guest room, I closed the door and slid down against it, the magnitude of my situation crushing me. 3 weeks of unemployment had already strained my finances. My severance was mostly spent on outstanding bills. My lease was already terminated, my furniture in storage. I had nowhere to go and barely enough savings for a security deposit, let alone first and last month's rent in Boston's astronomical market. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through contacts, mentally categorizing friends by their potential to help. As panic rose, my phone buzzed. A text from my brother Jason, who lived in Chicago. "You okay? Mom just called with some story about you leaving. What's happening?" I stared at the message. They'd already started spinning the narrative, making it sound like my choice. I typed back the truth: "They're kicking me out. 2 days' notice. Because of the Prescott's gala." Jason's response was immediate: "WTF? That's insane. Can you come stay with me?" For a moment, hope flickered, then reality extinguished it. Chicago meant abandoning my job search here, plus I couldn't afford the plane ticket. "Can't afford it right now. I'll figure something out. I can send some cash," he offered. Pride made me hesitate, but practicality won. "Maybe for a hotel if needed." "Thanks." I spent the night cycling through emotions: shock, grief, betrayal, panic, anger, despair. Around 2 a.m., lying on the bed staring at the ceiling, I reached rock bottom. Everything I thought I could count on had evaporated. My career, my apartment, and now even my family safety net. I felt utterly alone, discarded for social appearances. But somewhere in those dark hours, as tears dried on my pillow, a tiny spark ignited. If I truly had nothing left to lose, then I also had nothing holding me back. If my parents' approval was permanently out of reach, perhaps it was time to stop reaching for it altogether. By dawn, that spark had grown just enough to get me moving. 2 days. 48 hours to rebuild a life from scratch. I had no choice but to try. I woke with swollen eyes, but a strange calm. The path forward wasn't clear, but standing still wasn't an option. I opened my notebook and made 3 columns: housing, storage, income. Breaking down the impossible into manageable pieces was the only way forward. Housing came first. I scrolled through contacts, assessing each friendship for closeness and spare room potential. First call: Stephanie, my college roommate. "I'd love to help, but we just had my mother-in-law move in after her surgery," she explained apologetically. "There's literally no space." Next, Taylor from my previous job. "Oh Audrey, we're actually listing our spare room on Airbnb now for income since the layoffs." "I'm so sorry." Then Madeline, a friend from my photography class. "We're renovating that room right now, it's down to the studs." Rain check. With each rejection, panic bubbled higher. This wasn't just about inconvenience, it was about basic shelter. I forced myself to dial a 4th number: Rachel, my friend from freshman year communications class. We weren't as close anymore, but she'd always been kind. 2 days. "That's insane," she said after I explained. "Listen, my place is tiny, but the couch is yours for a couple weeks if you need it. Not ideal, but better than nothing." Relief flooded through me. Rachel, you're a lifesaver. Seriously. Just until I can figure something out. Hey, that's what friends are for. And don't worry about my boyfriend, he's pretty chill. Next challenge, my belongings. Most of my furniture was already in a storage unit after giving up my apartment, but I still had several boxes of personal items, clothes, and, most importantly, my photography equipment. The storage unit was already at capacity. I called around and found a small secondary unit available immediately. The cost made me wince, $175 per month, but I had no choice. I put the deposit on my nearly maxed credit card, securing it for at least a month. As I methodically packed my remaining possessions, my parents maintained a cold distance. My father left for work without a word. My mother moved around the house as if I were already gone, making occasional comments that twisted the knife. Make sure you leave the towels in the hamper, not the bathroom floor. Please don't take the hangers, they are part of the guest room set. I've scheduled the cleaning service for Wednesday morning, so the room needs to be completely empty by then. Each statement reinforced that I was no longer family, but an inconvenience to be managed. I discovered they'd already been making calls, crafting their narrative. My aunt called, her voice dripping with concern. Your mother tells me you're moving out to pursue some photography thing. Darling, is that wise in this economy? They transformed their ultimatum into my impulsive decision, preserving their image as supportive parents dealing with a wayward daughter. As I carefully packed my camera equipment, the one possession I couldn't bear to lose, my mother appeared in the doorway. All those expensive camera toys, she sighed. If you'd invested that money instead, like we suggested. Something in me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. They're not toys, Mom. They are professional tools. And they're going to save me now that you and Dad won't. She bristled. We've supported you for 28 years. There comes a point when appearances matter more than your daughter having a safe place to stay. Yes, apparently there does come that point. You're being unfair, Audrey. This is about you taking responsibility. I closed the camera case with a decisive click. No, this is about the Prescott's gala, and what the neighbors might think. Let's at least be honest about that. She left without responding, and I returned to packing with mechanical efficiency. By evening, my car was loaded with everything I could fit, the rest secured in the new storage unit. As I prepared to leave, my parents stood in the foyer, a united front. My father held out an envelope. A little something to help you get established, he said stiffly. I didn't reach for it. Keep it. I wouldn't want to delay my journey to responsibility any longer. Audrey, my mother began, her expression conflicted. It's fine, I interrupted. I get it. The Prescott's opinion matters more. I hope the gala is everything you wish for. I walked out without taking the envelope, without a hug or goodbye. Despite my brave words, it took everything in me not to break down as I started the car. My entire life had just been compressed into a Honda Civic and a storage unit, my family relationships damaged perhaps beyond repair. As I drove toward Rachel's apartment, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me fail. Somehow, I would find a way forward. Rachel's apartment was in Somerville, a cozy one-bedroom with barely enough space for her and her boyfriend Mark. The couch was shorter than I was, positioned directly next to their small dining table in the combination living-dining area. No privacy, no space, but it was shelter, and for that I was immensely grateful. It's not much, Rachel apologized, clearing magazines from the coffee table. But mi casa es su casa, or whatever. It's perfect, I insisted, though we both knew it wasn't. I can't thank you enough. Mark emerged from the bedroom with a forced smile. Hey, Audrey. Rough situation, huh? Hope you get back on your feet soon. The emphasis on soon wasn't subtle. I smiled weakly. That's the plan. That first morning, I woke before they did, folding my blankets neatly and transforming back into guest mode before they emerged for breakfast. I spent the day at a coffee shop, applying for every marketing position I could find, expanding my search to include administrative roles, receptionist positions. Anything that might provide immediate income. Each evening, I returned with forced optimism. Good leads today, I'd report, though rejection emails were already filling my inbox. Something will come through soon. By the end of the first week, the strain was showing. Rachel remained supportive, but Mark's patience visibly thinned. He'd sigh when entering the living room to find me typing on my laptop. His whispered conversations with Rachel grew more frequent, though they thought I couldn't hear. It's been a week already, he muttered one night in their bedroom. Did she say how long temporary is exactly? She's trying, Mark, Rachel defended. What's she supposed to do, sleep in her car? I'm just saying, we didn't sign up for a roommate. Our lease doesn't even allow it. I pretended to be asleep when they emerged, shame burning through me. The next day, I expanded my job search further, adding retail positions, barista openings, anything that could provide income quickly. The second week brought increasing tension. Mark stopped acknowledging me beyond brief nods. Rachel's smile grew strained as she assured me, take the time you need, while her eyes said something different. The breaking point came unexpectedly. I was working at their small dining table when I reached for my coffee, accidentally knocking it onto Rachel's open laptop beside me. Coffee splashed across the keyboard as we both lunged to save it. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I grabbed napkins, desperately trying to dry the computer. Rachel moved with practiced calm. It's fine, it happens. Let me just. She turned the laptop upside down, coffee dripping onto the floor. I'll replace it if it's damaged, I promised, though we both knew I couldn't afford to. Don't worry about it. It's probably fine. Her voice was steady, but I saw the concern in her eyes as she examined her work computer. That night, I overheard another whispered argument between Rachel and Mark. This time, my name featured prominently. I made my decision before morning came. Rachel had been more than generous, but I was becoming a burden rather than a friend. Before she could ask me to leave, I would go on my own terms. I waited until they both left for work, then packed my few belongings and wrote a note. Rachel, thank you for everything. You've been an incredible friend when I needed one most. I've found another arrangement, so you and Mark can have your space back. I'll repay your kindness someday, I promise. Love, Audrey. It was a lie, but a necessary one to preserve both our dignities. I had exactly $237 left in my checking account. After retrieving some clothes from storage, I found the cheapest motel on the outskirts of the city, a grim place that charged $89 per night. It would buy me 2 nights of shelter while I figured out next steps. The motel room was depressing. Stained carpet, bedspread that had seen better decades, the persistent smell of old cigarettes despite the no smoking sign. I sat on the edge of the bed, reality crashing down around me. 3 weeks ago, I'd had a career, an apartment, a life I'd built. Now I was in a motel room with dwindling funds, no job prospects, and parents who had discarded me. In less than 48 hours, I wouldn't even have this sad room. I stepped into the shower, turned on the water, and finally allowed myself to break down completely. As hot water mixed with tears, I sobbed until my throat was raw. Every rejection, every dismissal, every failure poured out of me. When the water ran cold, I stood shivering, utterly empty. And in that emptiness came a strange clarity. I had nothing left to lose. No reputation to protect, no expectations to meet, no image to maintain. I was already at rock bottom. The only direction left was up, and the path was entirely mine to choose. Morning light filtered through thin curtains as I sat cross-legged on the motel bed, my notebook open before me. Something had shifted during the night. The desperation remained, but alongside it grew a quiet determination. I wrote at the top of a fresh page, "What do I actually want?" For so long, my choices had been compromises, communications instead of photography, marketing instead of creative work, stability over passion. But stability had proven an illusion anyway. If I was rebuilding from scratch, why not build something authentic? I inventoried my assets. My camera equipment, professional-grade Canon, 3 quality lenses, lighting equipment. Skills, 5 years of marketing experience, knowledge of visual storytelling, social media strategy, basic web design. Connections, former colleagues, vendors, clients I'd built relationships with. Next, I created a 2-track plan. Track 1, immediate survival. Track 2, building something sustainable. Both tracks had to merge eventually, but I needed to solve track 1 first. I opened LinkedIn and searched for former colleagues. Sarah Thompson, who had been our agency's account manager for event clients, had recently joined Elegant Events, a boutique wedding planning company. We'd always had a good rapport, bonding over our shared appreciation for visual storytelling. My message was honest but confident. "Sarah, hope you're thriving at Elegant Events. I've recently decided to pursue photography full-time, and am building my portfolio. I notice your company works with multiple wedding photographers. Would you be open to connecting me with your photography team? I'd love to discuss second shooter opportunities, or assist at upcoming events. My marketing background gives me a unique perspective on capturing moments clients value most. Coffee soon. Warmly, Audrey." I hit send before I could overthink it, then continued applying for conventional jobs that could provide immediate income. By afternoon, a notification appeared. Sarah had responded. "Audrey. Great to hear from you. Actually, we just had a second shooter cancel for this Saturday's wedding. Emergency rate is $350 for the day. Interested? Lead photographer is Danielle Hayes. Need to confirm ASAP." My heart raced. An actual paying opportunity, doing what I loved. I responded immediately, absolutely interested. Please connect me with Danielle for details. Thank you so much. Within hours, I was on the phone with Danielle, an established wedding photographer with a photojournalistic style similar to what I admired. She was brisk but friendly, explaining expectations and equipment requirements. "It's mostly candid reception shots, family groupings, and backup angles during key moments," she explained. "Sarah vouched for your eye, so I'm trusting you. Don't make either of us look bad." "I won't," I promised, already mentally preparing. "Thank you for the opportunity." The night before the wedding, I barely slept, obsessively checking my gear, charging batteries, formatting memory cards. I used my remaining cash to dry clean my one professional outfit and get a simple haircut to look presentable. Saturday arrived with perfect weather for an outdoor wedding. I arrived an hour early, introduced myself to Danielle, and absorbed her instructions like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. As guests arrived at the waterfront venue, I fell into a rhythm. Years of marketing had taught me to anticipate moments before they happened, to position myself for authentic reactions rather than posed stiffness. I captured the father of the bride blinking back tears when he first saw her, the flower girl's unfiltered joy as she danced, authentic laughter during toasts. Between formal shots, Danielle glanced at my preview screen and nodded approvingly. "Good eye," she said simply before moving on, high praise from someone so experienced. By evening's end, my feet ached and my back screamed from carrying equipment, but exhilaration outweighed exhaustion. I'd captured over 1,800 images, many of which I knew instinctively were portfolio-worthy. "Send me your best 20 through Dropbox for the client preview," Danielle instructed as we packed up. "If they are solid, I might have another wedding next month." Associate photographers who don't flake are hard to find. That night in my motel room, I carefully edited my selections, enhancing rather than altering the authentic moments. When I finally collapsed into bed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: pride. I'd created value today, using skills nobody could take from me. Sunday morning brought another piece of unexpected fortune. Sarah texted, "Client loved your preview shots. Also, random question, you looking for a room? My cousin Mia needs a housemate in Jamaica Plain. Small room, $650 per month, utilities included. Nothing fancy but clean and safe. Interested?" The universe was suddenly conspiring in my favor. $650 works perfectly. Could I see it today? By afternoon, I was meeting Mia, a nurse with irregular hours who needed a reliable housemate more than she needed living room company. The room was tiny, barely fitting a twin bed and small desk, but it had a window with northern light perfect for photography, and the house was clean and well maintained. "Sarah says you're a photographer." "That's cool," Mia said casually. "I work nights often, so I mostly need someone quiet who pays rent on time." "That would be me," I assured her. "I'm very grateful for the opportunity." With my first photography payment and last reserves combined, I secured the room, moving in that evening with my minimal possessions. The space was small, but it was mine. I set up my laptop, an external hard drive on the desk, arranged my camera equipment carefully in the closet, and made the bed with fresh sheets. That night, I created a makeshift studio in the corner, using a white sheet as backdrop and my window as natural light. I photographed my few meaningful possessions: my grandfather's pocket watch, a smooth stone from a childhood beach trip, my first professional camera, creating a visual inventory of what truly mattered. As I worked late into the night building a simple portfolio website, I remembered my father's dismissal of my camera toys. A bitter laugh escaped me. Those toys were now my livelihood, my path forward, my declaration of independence. Before sleeping, I allowed myself one small luxury: a premium coffee ordered through a delivery app. Sitting on my bed, watching moonlight filter through my window, I savored each sip. It was a tiny celebration, but it felt monumental. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't compromising my dreams to meet someone else's expectations. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine. The next 3 months passed in a blur of hustle and calculated risks. My daily routine became mechanical in its efficiency: mornings at a part-time administrative job I'd secured at a local community college, afternoons building my photography business, evenings editing images or networking at local events. Sleep became a luxury, rest an afterthought. My portfolio grew strategically. After 2 more weddings with Danielle, I had enough quality images to create specialized galleries: weddings, portraits, events. I leveraged my marketing background to design a simple but distinctive brand identity, focusing on authentic emotion photography as my niche. My tiny room transformed into a functional studio space. I mounted adjustable lights on tension rods between walls, created a collapsible backdrop system, and arranged my equipment for maximum efficiency in minimal space. Mia found my dedication amusing but respected the hustle. "You're either working or sleeping," she commented one rare evening when we both were home. "Don't you ever just relax?" The concept seemed foreign. "This doesn't feel like work," I explained, editing a corporate headshot series. "For the first time, it feels like purpose." Small victories accumulated. My first solo client booking. My first repeat client. My first referral. Setting up business banking and legitimately writing photographer as my occupation. Each step solidified my new identity. Local business networking events became my hunting grounds despite my natural introversion. I'd station myself near the refreshments, camera in hand, offering free professional headshots to attendees, a valuable service that showcased my skills while building connections. The approach yielded corporate contracts, small but significant, headshots for a law firm, product photography for a local bakery, event coverage for a non-profit fundraiser. I created systems for everything, applying corporate efficiency to creative entrepreneurship. Client questionnaires ensured I captured their vision. Automated emails maintained communication. Templates streamlined contracts and invoicing. My marketing background provided structure my competitors often lacked. As November approached, my business reached a delicate sustainability. Not thriving yet, but surviving. I could pay rent, feed myself, and reinvest in essential equipment. The part-time administrative job provided healthcare benefits I couldn't afford to lose, but my identity had firmly shifted from unemployed marketer to emerging photographer. Then came the call from Jason. "So, Thanksgiving at the parents'. Are you coming?" His tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I haven't been invited," I replied flatly. We spoke regularly, but my parents had maintained radio silence since I'd left. "Mom mentioned it yesterday. Said to tell you you're welcome to join. The usual crowd will be there." The usual crowd meant extended family, my parents' closest friends, and inevitably, perfect Brittany with her latest accomplishments. The thought made my stomach clench. "I don't think so, Jason. Things are busy here." "Audrey," he sighed, "it's been months. Maybe it's time to mend fences." "They haven't exactly reached out with apologies," I pointed out. "You know them. Pride and all that. But it's family." Family. The word had lost its comfort. Yet as I considered declining, a new thought emerged, walking in on my terms, not as the failure they'd dismissed, but as someone building something meaningful. The idea held a certain appeal. "I'll think about it," I conceded. That night, I couldn't sleep. Attending meant facing the people who had cast me out when I most needed support. Not attending meant giving their version of events, poor Audrey, still struggling with reality, unchallenged credibility. By morning, I'd made my decision. I would go, not seeking approval, but refusing to hide. I borrowed a professional outfit from a photographer friend, got a simple haircut, and mentally rehearsed responses to inevitable questions about my situation. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and clear. I parked on the street rather than the driveway, a small act of independence. Through the front window, I could see the gathering already in progress, my father holding court in the living room, my mother arranging something in the dining room. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell instead of using my old key. My mother answered, surprise briefly crossing her features before her social mask descended. "Audrey. We weren't sure you'd make it." Her hug was brief, performance for any watching eyes. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied with equal artifice. Inside, reactions varied. My father nodded stiffly from across the room. Aunt Susan embraced me warmly with genuine questions about my life. Uncle Mike clapped my shoulder awkwardly. Cousin Brittany assessed my outfit with barely concealed judgment. Audrey's here, my mother announced unnecessarily, guiding me toward the appetizers. Get yourself something to eat, dear. You're looking a bit thin. The familiar dynamics reasserted themselves immediately. My father discussed market trends with the other men. My mother fluttered between groups, maintaining conversational flow. Brittany detailed her recent promotion to anyone who would listen. I filled a small plate and found Aunt Susan, who had always been the family rebel in her own subtle way. So, she said quietly, tell me what you've really been up to. Jason mentioned photography. The genuine interest in her voice was refreshing. I shared the condensed version of my journey, emphasizing current projects rather than past difficulties. I'd love to see your work, she said when I finished. Do you have photos? I hesitated, then pulled out my phone, opening my portfolio site. As I scrolled through images, others drifted over, curiosity piqued. You took these? Cousin Brittany's husband asked, sounding genuinely impressed by a series of architectural shots I'd done for a real estate client. These are quite good, Uncle Mike admitted, examining a corporate event series. Very professional. The gathering around my phone grew, conversations shifting to questions about my process, clients, and business model. For the first time in family memory, I held genuine attention. My father remained conspicuously absent from this circle until my mother inevitably pulled him over. He glanced at the screen with studied indifference. Audrey's little hobby seems to be keeping her busy, he commented to the group. The dismissal hung in the air, challenging the emerging respect I'd been cultivating. Conversations faltered as everyone awaited my response. 5 months ago, I would have accepted this diminishment. Today, I met his gaze steadily. It's not a hobby, Dad. It's my business. I have regular clients, contracted events through spring, and I'm cash flow positive after just 3 months of operation. Most small businesses don't reach that milestone for at least a year. I stated these facts calmly, without defensiveness, the way he'd taught me to present evidence in arguments. His expression flickered, surprise, perhaps a reluctant reassessment. Uncle Mike broke the tension. Say, do you have business cards? Our company needs new headshots for the website. Our last photographer charged a fortune and made everyone look like wax figures. I reached into my bag. As a matter of fact, I do. Throughout dinner, I felt my father watching me as I fielded questions about my work. My mother alternated between pride at the positive attention I was receiving and discomfort at its focus on a career path she'd never endorsed. As guests moved to the living room for coffee, my father cornered me in the kitchen as I helped carry dessert plates. This photography thing, he began, voice lowered. It's not sustainable long-term, Audrey. You know that. It might be fine while you're young, but eventually, you'll want security. The familiar criticism, though softened, triggered a surge of emotion. I carefully set down the plates before responding. Actually, I've run the numbers, built the business plan, and analyzed the market. There's significant growth potential, especially with my marketing background as differentiation. But more importantly, I'm doing work that matters to me. Matter is subjective. Security is objective. His lawyer's precision with words remained intact. Your mother and I only want what's best for you. No, I said quietly. You want what's most comfortable for you. There's a difference. We've supported you your entire life, he countered, voice hardening. Everything we did was for your benefit. Until it became inconvenient. Until the Prescott's gala mattered more than your daughter having a place to stay. He flushed. That was an unfortunate situation, but you've clearly landed on your feet. Perhaps you needed the push. I didn't need abandonment, I corrected him. But you're right about one thing. I did land on my feet, no thanks to you and Mom. I built this myself, and no one can take it from me now. He started to respond, then stopped, reassessing me as if seeing me clearly for the first time. Without another word, I picked up the dessert plates and returned to the dining room, leaving him alone in the kitchen. I left the gathering early, declining requests to stay longer with a practiced excuse about an early client meeting the next day. It wasn't entirely untrue. I did have a corporate breakfast shoot, but mostly I needed to escape the emotional undertow of my childhood home. In my car, I finally released the breath I'd been holding all evening. Tears came, but not of defeat or anger. They were tears of release, of boundaries established, of a self reclaimed. I drove back to my tiny room with its makeshift studio, to the life I was building on my terms. It wasn't perfect or prestigious, but it was authentic. And for the first time, that felt like enough. 1 year after that fateful family dinner, I unlocked the door to my new apartment. A modest one-bedroom in Cambridge with large windows that bathed the space in natural light. Nothing fancy, but entirely mine. I set down grocery bags and smiled at the framed magazine article hanging beside my desk, Visual Storytellers to Watch: How Audrey Mitchell is Transforming Boston's Photography Scene. The feature in Boston Creative Quarterly had been unexpected. A client had nominated me for their annual spotlight, leading to an interview and professional profile. The article highlighted my distinctive approach, blending marketing strategy with authentic visual narratives, a niche I'd carved by necessity that now defined my brand. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Opening it, I was surprised to see my mother's name in the sender field. The body contained only a link to the online version of the article and a brief message: "Your father and I saw this. Congratulations." No effusive praise, no detailed response to the content, just acknowledgement. From my parents, it was practically a standing ovation. I hesitated before responding. Our contact over the past year had been minimal: holiday texts, one brief call on my birthday. The wounds had scabbed over but not fully healed. After careful thought, I typed, "Thank you. I'd be open to coffee sometime if you're interested." 3 days later, I sat across from my parents at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between their home and mine. The conversation was stilted, layers of unspoken emotions creating barriers despite our physical proximity. "Your business seems to be doing well," my father commented, stirring his coffee methodically. "It is," I confirmed. "I've hired an assistant part-time to handle administrative tasks." "That's a significant step," he noted, the businessman in him assessing this milestone. "The article was lovely," my mother added. Several friends mentioned seeing it. I understood the subtext. My success had become socially acceptable, something they could reference at country club gatherings without embarrassment. "I've worked hard for it," I replied simply. "Yes, well," my father cleared his throat, "we always knew you were capable when you applied yourself properly." The attempt to reframe their opposition as supportive tough love was transparent. Part of me wanted to challenge it, to force acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused. The wiser part recognized their limited capacity for such honesty. "I've learned a lot this past year," I said instead. "About resilience, authenticity, and building something meaningful." "We're glad things worked out," my mother offered, reaching across to pat my hand briefly. "They didn't just work out," I corrected gently. "I rebuilt my life after losing everything." "There's a difference." Discomfort flickered across their faces. My father adjusted his watch, my mother straightened her napkin. Familiar signs of emotional deflection. "Well," my father finally said, "perhaps things happened for the best, then." It wasn't an apology, or even an acknowledgement of harm done. It was simply the most they could offer, reframing abandonment as inadvertent benefit. I let it stand, recognizing the futility of expecting more. Our relationship had changed fundamentally, cordial but bounded, with clear limitations I now accepted rather than fought against. Walking home afterward, I reflected on how dramatically my life had transformed. Beyond the professional achievements lay deeper changes: confidence in my decisions, boundaries in my relationships, trust in my instincts. Weekly therapy sessions had helped me process the family dynamics that had shaped me, the conditional approval, the narrow definition of success, the emotional leverage. I was learning to disentangle my self-worth from external validation, though old patterns still emerged in moments of stress. My chosen family had expanded as my biological family connections recalibrated. Rachel and I had reconciled after I'd established myself, our friendship stronger for its honest renegotiation. Mia had become a true friend rather than merely a housemate. Fellow photographers, once competitors, became collaborators and confidants through monthly skill-sharing gatherings I'd organized. My business continued growing strategically. I'd identified underserved niches, corporate storytelling that humanized brands, authentic promotional imagery for small businesses, visual narratives for nonprofits, that aligned with both my values and market opportunities. Hiring Kelly, a photography student, as my part-time assistant marked a pivotal transition from survival mode to sustainable operation. She reminded me of myself years earlier, talented, uncertain, seeking mentorship beyond technical skills. "I don't get it," she confessed one afternoon as we organized equipment for an upcoming shoot. "Why bother with all this client psychology stuff? Isn't photography about the images?" "Photography is about connection," I explained, recognizing my younger self in her question. "Technical skill matters, but understanding what people truly want to see in themselves and their events, that's what separates working photographers from struggling artists." I found myself sharing lessons from my journey, conscious of how they might help her avoid similar pitfalls. When she mentioned her parents' concerns about her career choice, I recognized the opportunity to pay forward what I'd learned. "Your parents' worries come from love, even when expressed through control," I told her. "But only you can determine which sacrifices are worthwhile for your vision. Build skills that generate value, keep your overhead low, and remember that security comes from adaptability more than conformity." One evening, reviewing quarterly financial projections, I realized I'd crossed a threshold I'd once thought impossible. My photography business now generated more income than my previous corporate position. Not extravagant wealth, but sustainable independence doing work that energized rather than depleted me. I celebrated this milestone alone, watching sunset from my apartment window, savoring the symmetry of the moment. 1 year ago, I'd stood at rock bottom, watching everything familiar crumble. Today, I stood on a foundation of my own creation, built brick by stubborn brick. The journey had stripped away illusions about family, success, security, and self-worth. In their place grew more nuanced understandings: family as both biological connection and chosen community, success as alignment with personal values rather than external metrics, security as resilience rather than predictability, self-worth as inherent rather than earned. My parents' ultimatum, cruel as it seemed at the time, had indeed been a gift, though not in the way they'd intended. It had forced me to confront the compromise at the core of my existence, pursuing approval at the expense of authenticity. Without that breaking point, I might have continued indefinitely on a path that looked successful from the outside while hollowing me from within. As I watched Boston's lights emerge against the darkening sky, I felt profound gratitude for the journey, painful as parts had been. I'd discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, clarity I couldn't have gained through comfort, and purpose I might never have found without necessity as motivation. The path ahead remained uncertain in its specifics, but clear in its direction: forward, authentically, on my terms. Not in reactive opposition to my parents' vision, but in thoughtful alignment with my own evolving understanding of a life well lived. My phone buzzed with a text from Kelly, "Quick question about tomorrow's shoot." I smiled, recognizing another full circle moment. Tomorrow, I would mentor someone else taking their first uncertain steps. The journey continued, the lessons multiplied, the story expanded beyond mere survival into meaning. That broken family dinner table now seemed a distant memory, painful but formative, like all true transformations must be. The ultimatum that once shattered my world had ultimately freed me to rebuild it, stronger and truer than before. Have you ever experienced a moment when what seemed like your worst catastrophe eventually revealed itself as your greatest opportunity? Share your story in the comments below. And if you're currently facing your own rock bottom moment, remember, sometimes losing everything is the beginning of finding what truly matters. Like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Your support helps me continue sharing these journey stories. Thank you for witnessing mine today.